Awesome, so we're gonna do a neck expansion, and I'm just gonna sort of show you what I do. First off, we typically use the extra sort of sheet of latex that comes off around the neck. If you need this, just let us know and we can send you a scrap or a piece. Now what I'm gonna do with this one in particular, I already sort of have an idea of how big this is supposed to be, and the size that you're gonna need to do will sort of depend on how close it is to perfectly fitting your neck. But usually about an inch to an inch and a half will be good for you, but it really does depend on your specific sort of measurements. So you can see I'm just sort of trimming this down just a little bit, just getting rid of some of the goofy sort of edge bits. And what I'm left with is this sort of curved piece. Now this curved piece, you'll notice it kind of curves about the same as the sort of neck piece here. We can also just cast the actual sculpt, but this is actually good enough, and actually really good in a lot of cases. So what I'm gonna be doing is first of all, this is kind of the harrowing part, if you've never done this before, is to cut a perfectly good mask straight down the middle. And depending on how far up you wanna go, you can get a little bit more comfort. You can see if you go up to around here, this will be a lot of like your neck area, and it'll cover up to around here. If you go any sort of higher up here and you start to inject a little bit more, it'll actually alleviate a little bit of the pressure on your lower jaw as well. So in this particular instance, it's not that dramatic a piece that I'm going to be adding. So what I'm going to do is first of all, just try and, I've already made the cut. The ideal is to basically cut the underside for the amount that you're going to add first. And then once you sort of cut that part, then you measure this piece here in order to determine how much you need. I've determined roughly how much I need, but what I'm going to do here is basically make a straight cut where I'm not doing anything fancy. Straight up, boop, like so. Once I've made this straight cut, the nice thing is that this should fit pretty much like that. You can see that I could like line this up and glue this on perfectly, and it'll fit there just like that. Now I already know the size that I want here. You may want to sort of measure with tape like this. One thing that you can do is actually put this on your head, and then when it's on your head, basically have this separated by as much as it feels comfortable. Kind of measure that gap, and once you've measured that gap, you should know how big this scrap should be when you put it in. That's the best way really to know how much you're gonna need if you've already got the zipper installed. But what I'm gonna do now is basically cut the other part down to form. This one does not require much at all. This one's only like 0.25 inches, which is like super, super minor, but it can make a big difference in terms of comfort. Every millimeter does matter when it comes down to getting a pretty good skin tight fit. There we go. So I've got my wedge here. Let's just see how that fits. I'm gonna take a little bit more off of this side. There we go. Perfect. You may take a little longer to sort of do this. I've got a pretty good eye for it. I've got it pretty much perfect right here in terms of size. You can see like, if I just let it hold like this, it'll actually pretty much stay in there, but what we're gonna use here is Copydex, because obviously that's not gonna just stay on its own. Copydex is pretty great for gluing in latex. You can use sort of a rubber cement mixture as well. That's an option, but I find this is actually some of the best latex glue that you can get. All right. So what I'm doing is focusing on just one side first. And making sure that as I'm going in, it's actually seamless. If you end up creating kind of a bit of a ridge here, you can kind of fix it. You could either Dremel it down and then use paint thinner to try and smooth it. Paint thinner will act as like sort of it kind of dissolves latex a little bit and it'll smooth it out. But if you can get it perfectly smooth, then you can basically coat the rest with top coats and just get it 100%. You really don't have to hold this for too long in order for it to sort of set. You can see it's already sort of staying there on its own. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side. You can obviously take longer if you want. I'm just trying to go quick for the video. But you can see just how quick this process is. And here we go. Other side, I'm gonna try and keep this equally seamless. Closer you get it, the less you have to do later in order to hide that seam. Notice that this at the bottom, it doesn't really want to stay together super duper good, but if I press and hold it, it probably will. Maybe not at first. If needed, that part can just be coated. I'm just wiping off the excess here. Almost certainly this bottom part here will hold if I just hold it like this. But if there was a gap, I could definitely sort of coat that with latex. That's how you install it.